All right, let's get some reaction now on the matric results. And we're joined via Zoom by Equal Education's Head of Research and Development, Roné McFarlane. A very good afternoon to you, and thanks so much for joining us here on SABC News, Roné.
Good afternoon, Flo, and good afternoon to the viewers.
So generally when we speak, when we speak to equal education, we often dissect some of the issues and challenges in the education system and that learners are faced with. But I guess now at this time, many matriculants are celebrating their well-earned achievements. And in some cases, some of them have done well despite those challenges that we often talk about and dissect on the show with you. What's your reaction on the back of the results announcements to this?
Yeah, I think the first thing to say is a huge congratulations to all of those matrics who got their results and managed to pass matric. One's thoughts are also obviously with those who might have gotten bad news. And one would really just encourage those young people who face some disappointment to access the psychosocial support that they need. But for the rest, and also for all the teachers who supported the class of 2021 through very challenging circumstances, one really wants to say, well done. We only saw obviously a very small improvement in the traditional pass rate by about 0.2%. And given that there are a lot of factors, like, for instance, the number of learners who wrote and so on, that influence the pass rate, we kind of saw the pass rate. It would be accurate to say that the pass rate kind of stayed steady. But there are some other positives that are definitely worth celebrating. Firstly, obviously, some people predicted a decline in the pass rate, which we didn't see. We also saw a lot more learners write the matric exam. On the one hand, this could be because more learners are actually making their way through the schooling system to matric. And we also saw an increase in part-time learners registering to write their matric exam. So that might be someone who's already dropped out and then came back and wrote their matric, which is obviously excellent. We saw about a 20% increase in learners writing their exam.
Yeah.
And then the other related to that is the throughput rate. Equal Education always says instead of just looking at the pass rate, we should be looking at how learners move through the system. And if we look at how many learners were in grade 2 10 years ago, we see that the throughput rate of how many learners are making it to matric and passing has increased from 46% to over 50% to around 54%. So that is, obviously we want to see more learners make it through the system, but it is important to celebrate those improvements. So a very big well done to the class of 2021.
Yeah. I heard the Minister of Basic Education, Angie saying that, and just on the back of you talking about the fact that the numbers of students who actually sat for matric exams was quite high. It was at 897,963. But then I was rather concerned about the number of learners who progressed, because that number was significantly less to that. If I remember, I got that number at 61,780. And I wonder, I suppose Equal Education would have a clearer understanding as to why there is that big gap between, those who actually did sit down to write the exams and those that were able to indeed progress.
Yes, so that the progress learners are the learners who, as per the department's progression policy, you can only fail once in a school phase. So if you have already failed once between grade 10 and grade 12, you then get put through automatically to the next grade, even if you didn't pass. So progress learners would be learners who have already failed once in their grade, in their phase. They then they then failed again in grade 11, but was put through to grade 12 and managed to, and then some of them actually managed to pass. And that figure, I think it's close to 30,000 of them who passed the matric exam, is worth celebrating, because those are learners who would have been held back and actually made it through and managed to pass their matric. So a huge congratulations actually to those learners, and then obviously the teachers who had to support them to make up that backlog of knowledge that they didn't have at the end of grade 11.
I was listening to a principal talking to SABC News, and this is a principal of a school who produced actually one of the top learners in South Africa. And it was interesting to me that, he was saying that he actually only has capacity to carry 250 learners, but that particular school carries over 1,000 learners, and he kind of resigns himself to the fact that he will just have to make do with that. I mean, one wonders that one wonders how much more the school could have actually done or been able to achieve if there weren't. There's obviously then going to be an issue of infrastructure when there's so much more overcrowding than what the school can hold. And so I wonder, where does one actually begin even in addressing these issues? And I mean, this is a rural school that we visited as SABC News. So there's not there's not too many schools around and a choice where children can indeed be divided to other schools when this is what they've got. And I wonder how these sort of challenges can be addressed, because I'm sure a school like that could do even better.
Absolutely. And, that's a really important factor that kind of almost get overlooked when we just look at the raw results. It's kind of easy to compare the results of schools on paper and forget about how different the challenges are that schools and teachers and learners in different contexts face. Yeah. We know that something like overcrowding is a huge problem. Equal Education has actually just recently released a report on overcrowding in Gauteng. But as you say, it's also a problem in rural provinces. And the big challenge is that we have seen over the past few years, government cuts the funding for education for the first time in democratic South Africa, which basically means that year on year, the education system is getting less money from Treasury to deliver education. Mm-hmm. Treasury's own documents acknowledge that this will lead to overcrowded classrooms, to fewer teachers, and that it will have an effect on learning outcomes. And it really has a devastating effect on education delivery. Some provinces are not filling posts when they become vacant because they simply do not have the funds to replace those teachers. In other provinces like KZN, learners who actually qualify according to the policy for scholar transport simply can't get provided with scholar transports because there's no funding, and as a result have to walk punishing distances to school. And these are really, really difficult challenges that we absolutely have to address. When it comes to overcrowding specifically, one of the calls EE has made is for the minister to pass norms around school capacity so that you don't get a situation where, as you were explaining, a school that is actually big enough to cater for 250 learners is catering for 1,000 learners. And just around the corner, especially in our urban provinces, you can have a school that is actually, serving less learners than what it can actually accommodate because the school has determined that it's full. So school capacity norms will definitely help even out those numbers. But as I said, budget allocation is also absolutely crucial to deal with some of those challenges.
Roné, thanks so much for the information you've given us this afternoon. We certainly do appreciate the work that you're doing with Equal Education, and we'll certainly keep those conversations going. Roné McFarlane is Equal Education's head of research.